Good morning. For the reading this morning, I'm going to read you a poem that was written by Ron Prosek many years ago when he offered to write a poem for a fundraiser for the church auction. And I bid on it and I was able to win the item. So he told me I could pick whatever subject I wanted and he would write a poem for me. So this is a poem about bluebirds. And here's the photo, or the picture that came with it. And this is by Ron Prosek for Mary Bender. Blue coats, beautiful blue coats, lost and gone. We thought you were forever away lost and slipping even from memory. Through eons numberless in the forest edges, over vast meadows generation after generation, flowing outward, flying over, years before we arrived, first from the west, then from the east. Moving ever inward, onward, upon you and yours, your fields, your flowers, your wild tall grasses, elements of your homes, age after tireless age. Down the reeds, the trees, and the new strangers we brought with us, frightening your young, raided, attacked, eaten out of house and home, eaten out of place, struck again and again, hiding, retreating, fading, disappearing, darker age following darker age. You and vast numbers of brothers and sisters absent from this place. In our darkness, we didn't know how much was missing. Season upon empty season, your notes missing from the symphony, but not forever. At least not forever. In time, a gentle stirring, then a steady, bright breeze, and slowly, some faint benevolence emerges. Something, someone helping, easing your way, years at last of grace increasing, a real turning somehow, your young thriving, nest after nest, place after place, at least a reprieve. Bluebirds returning, bluebirds multiplying, eating from our hands, comfortable in our artifacts, chirping happiness to us coming back to your realm and ours forever. Bluebirds forever, blue forever, we hope. Bluebirds. And yet the giver of life, also the destroyer, has sway over earth always. Now dies are being cast, courses set. Will any outlive the numbers that roll out? Read by fate, you survivors may instruct us, and our children must learn to love your children. There is a future for us both, in clinging to the earth and her ways, your ways, bluebirds. I'm Mary Bender, and I was asked to do a sermon this morning on birds because everyone knows I'm a bird lover and I like to do a lot of bird watching. That doesn't really sound like a sermon topic to me necessarily, so I'll probably digress a little bit so it's not just a science lecture. But I do like birds, and I have been observing especially eastern bluebirds for quite a long time, and I've learned a lot from them. When Stan and I first moved out to the Chardon area, we built a house on 7.5 acres. So we lived there for a short time and noticed some bluebirds flying around. And we had never seen eastern bluebirds before. So we put up a bluebird box on a pole and immediately got a pair of bluebirds nesting in there. Well, that was kind of inspirational. So before long, we had 7 bluebird boxes spread out with distancing between them so that they wouldn't be competing too much with each other. And we had a number of birds over the years that used those nest boxes, including chickadees and tree swallows, and of course the always present sparrows. We noticed after observing these birds for a while that each type of bird has a particular type of nest. They don't look at all the same. The bluebirds will use whatever materials are available, such as grasses, which they will weave pretty tightly into a nice round nest inside the box. Or if the nest box is near a pine tree, they may weave dead pine needles into a nice round nest. The wrens that have also been very fond of the boxes, the wrens will pile sticks into the box, and they'll almost fill the box up with sticks. And then they will lay their eggs in a hollow at the very back corner, one of the two corners at the back. They will never put their eggs up close to the opening, which is very helpful if you want to keep your little eggs away from raccoon paws and other invading birds. The chickadees will build a very tight nest with a lot of moss in it. They will run around and gather up moss off trees and rocks, and you'll be able to see it in the nest itself. Then when the nest is almost finished, they will often line it with fur, either rabbit fur or cat fur, dog fur, whatever they can find. And that seems to be pretty unique from what we were observing for the chickadees. The tree swallows weave a nest with grasses, similar to the bluebird nest, but when they get finished with their nest, the female tree swallow plucks large curving feathers off of her own breast and lines the nest with those, which results in keeping the eggs warm, as the fur does for the chickadees. It also keeps her breast area less feathered so that the skin is closer to the eggs when she is sitting on them, which I think also increases the warmth as she's incubating. So all this information and all this observation leads to the question, how do these birds know to do this? How do they know how to do their nests, or how do they know that it's beneficial to put fur in there, or that it's beneficial to put your eggs at the back corner? And so people frequently will ask me these questions when we're talking about these features of birds. And I think that it's important to ask the right question. And it isn't the right question to say, how do these birds know to do this? They don't actually know this at all. They are following instinct. And this instinct has been developed and evolved over thousands and thousands of years. So, for example, the eastern bluebirds were almost extinct back in the 1950s as more and more community growth was going on. More and more building was going on. Their habitat was being destroyed. Forests were being destroyed, and apple orchards, where they like to find holes in trees where they originally nested, were being destroyed. And there were more and more raccoons, more and more invading blue jays and those kinds of birds. So the eastern bluebirds were not competing well and were very close to extinct. At that point, some people started putting up bird boxes with holes that were measured to be just big enough for eastern bluebirds and smaller birds to enter, but the larger birds would not be able to enter, and it was more difficult for invading raccoons. The birds who were interested in those boxes and were willing to try to put a nest in them survived better than the birds who were still scrounging around in the woods trying to find an apple tree with a hole in it, or trying to find a woodpecker hole in some other location. So over time, the birds have been more successful if they happen to have the instinct to use that little round opening that they spotted in the nesting boxes. So you want to make sure that we don't use magical thinking when we're talking about nature. It's magical thinking to think that birds know these things, or that the mama bird has taught the baby bird how to do these things. These are mostly instinctual behaviors that have been refined over thousands of years of success and failure. So this brings me to my next point, which got me to kind of digress a little bit from the idea of the birds themselves. And it brought me to the question of how important is it to ask the right questions? Instead of saying, how do birds know to do this? We should be saying, what is the evolutionary advantage to this behavior? What is the evolutionary advantage to putting your eggs at the very back corner of your nest? And what is the evolutionary advantage of putting fur into your nest when you're building in the spring and it's still cold out? What is the evolutionary advantage to plucking feathers out of your breast and lining your nest with those feathers as far as the success of those eggs that you're trying to hatch? So I think those are the questions when you're talking about science. We use the question, what is the evolutionary advantage of this? We don't say, how did the bird know how to do this? Or did the mama bird teach the baby how to do this? Or did the papa bird teach the babies how to do this? So in order to avoid asking the wrong questions, I started thinking about the importance of asking the right question. And I have some examples of asking the wrong question and asking the right question. Let's say that your teenage daughter comes to you and she wants to climb Mount Everest and then paraglide off the top. Many parents might be tempted to ask the question, what the heck is wrong with you? Well, clearly that's the wrong question if you want to start a dialogue, or if you want to start a discussion and explore with your teenage daughter where she's going with this idea. So perhaps it would be better to ask the question, why do you want to do this? What will be the expected result of climbing Mount Everest and then paragliding off the top? Are there safer and more effective ways to accomplish what your goal is? What is your goal? Well, what are you trying to prove by climbing Mount Everest and doing this? Is it safe? Are you sure you want to do this? So there may be any number of questions that would be better than just doing the knee-jerk reaction and making your child feel like you are condescending and angry. So hopefully you can waltz into a conversation that will hopefully lead this child to a more logical conclusion. Last week I noticed when Bree was giving the sermon, and she had a quote from Howard Thurman that I thought was very interesting. She quoted Howard Thurman, who said that if someone confides a problem to you, oh no, that wasn't the one. Maybe it'll come to me, sorry. Anyway, one of the other examples would be that if someone is confiding a problem to you, instead of immediately trying to suggest a way to fix the problem or trying to lecture them about why they shouldn't have gotten into this mess in the first place, it might be more helpful to ask a question of just simply, how can I help? And then that may lead to a better outcome than many of the ways we approach other people who bring us their problems. Here's another example. I've heard a lot of people talking about restaurants and bars and Disney World being open, and the comment that I heard several times was, if restaurants and bars and Disney World can open, why can't schools be open? Well, that's the wrong question. The question should be, should the restaurants and bars and Disney World be open in the height of a pandemic when the numbers are going up instead of down? So here again, asking the right question, I think, is very helpful, and avoiding magical thinking when you're discussing nature is very helpful. and remembering the question about what is the evolutionary advantage to what's going on in nature. Okay, I took a little break and I found the Howard Thurman quote that I had forgotten about. This was what Bree was talking about at the service on July 26th. And Howard Thurman was quoted as saying the question he asked was, "Where will you go?" And then the second question was, "Who will go with you?" And I think maybe you could add the question, "Why am I going there?" Because that might be the first question to ask, not just where will I go, but why am I going there, or why are you going there? So I would like to end with the second verse of Blue Boat Home. It's a beautiful song, and I know a lot of people like it. I would sing it for you, but I sing best when I have Jerry Green singing in my left ear and a whole entire choir singing behind me. So I will simply read to you the second verse of Blue Boat Home, which is in the Teal hymnal, and also on some sheet music that the choir has. Sun my sail and moon my rudder as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, still my dry land heart can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. Sun my sail and moon my rudder as I ply the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here with my ship's companions, all we kindred pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, hail the great winds urging me on, greet the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor's song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port have I known. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat
This is the time in our service when we talk about passing the offering basket. But of course, there is no basket and there is no people to pass it to. But please keep in mind that we are still running a church community, and the building is still there, and the building still has a mortgage, and there are many, many other expenses that go on, even though we are all pretty much stuck at home and quarantining or isolating in honor of the pandemic. So the words today from my offertory are from Sarah Campbell. We receive fragments of holiness, glimpses of eternity, brief moments of insight. Let us gather them up for the precious gifts that they are, and renewed by their grace, move boldly into the unknown. And as we move boldly into the unknown, please remember the church in your gifting, and it is greatly appreciated. Thank you. For the benediction today, I want to use the words of David Arkin as set forth in the hymn number 173 in our gray hymnal, entitled "In the Branches of the Forest." In the branches of the forest, in the petals of the marigold, on the shoulder of the mountain, in the vastness of the sea, you will find a brooding sadness over all the ancient watershed. You will see it written plainly on the wind and in the sand. There's a blight upon the mountain. There's a sickness in the evening sky, and we ask the age-old question, can we purge us of this sin? Can we save the little nestling from the venom of the cankerworm? Can we clear the look of anguish from the soft eyes of the doe? In the thunder, new commandments sound a warning through the wilderness. Let the forest be untainted. Let the streams be undefiled. Let the waters of the river as they flow down to the ocean be as sweet as in the old days when the mountain stood alone. Please join me in the bond of union. We join hands in Unitarian Universalist fellowship, pledging ourselves to an individual religious freedom which transcends all creeds, not to think alike, but to journey together.